On the day of my wedding to the young Marquis, to humiliate me, he brought his mistress back to the mansion and made love to her. The emperor was furious and exiled him to the frontier. 3 years later, he returned from exile, bringing back a child, born of him and his mistress. His tone was firm. Chang'er will henceforth be your legitimate eldest son. I glanced at the half-exposed sleeve of a man's robe peeking from behind the screen, gently cradling my slightly rounded belly as I chuckled softly. My lord, you jest. I am only now with child, how could I bear a 2-year-old? His face turned ashen. I've only just returned. How could you be pregnant? I had reincarnated. And bound to a system tasked with avenging the original owner. The original owner deeply loved Xie. He had a mistress, and she endured it. When he brought the child born to his mistress back to the manor, she cherished that child as her own flesh and blood. She even used her own dowry to supplement the household finances and devoted herself to serving her mother-in-law. In the end, the child she raised with all her heart betrayed her. He brought his biological mother back to the manor, elevating the concubine to his wife. Xie had always despised the original owner. To save his reputation, he didn't divorce her. Instead, he colluded with the concubine and ruthlessly poisoned the original owner to death. He framed her for adultery with a servant, making it look like she hanged herself. He and his concubine indulged in carnal pleasures, living in unrestrained bliss. The original owner met a tragic death, her name forever tarnished by public condemnation. After her death, her resentment swelled to overwhelming proportions. The system stated that only when the original owner's resentment was completely dispelled would my mission be considered successful. The moment I arrived coincided precisely with Xie exile to the frontier by the emperor. At that time, the original owner rushed to the palace overnight to plead with the emperor to revoke the decree for Xie. She knelt outside the palace hall for an entire night until she fainted. The maid Xiao pushed open the door, panic etched on her face. Madam, it's terrible. The young Marquis is to be exiled to the frontier by the emperor. We must rush to the palace and beg his majesty for mercy. I remained unhurried, slowly picking a grape and popping it into my mouth. Beg for what? His exile has nothing to do with me. It's not me suffering. Xiao froze. But you love the Marquis most of all? I had no manners, casually spitting the grape skin onto the ground. Love his mother. Truthfully, I hoped the emperor would banish him. It would merely serve as a face-saving gesture for imperial dignity and my maternal family. Our marriage was bestowed by the emperor himself. On our wedding day, he brazenly defied the emperor's authority, openly bringing his concubine into the mansion to consummate their union. Such contempt for the emperor's presence, no wonder his majesty was furious. Yet his father, the loyal and valiant Marquis, died fighting for the nation. Out of respect for that bond, the emperor wouldn't truly exile the Marquis's only son to suffer at the frontier. It was merely a pretense. These 3 years, he could go anywhere, just not appear in the capital. Otherwise, how could he have been intimate with his concubine and fathered a child? I rose slowly, ready to undertake a grand endeavor. I would use Xie 3-year absence to gradually transfer the Marquisite's assets into my own name. By the time he returned, the Marquis would be nothing but an empty shell. Supporting a mistress and a child? I'd make him struggle just to keep a servant. As I stepped outside the courtyard, my gaze was drawn to a tall, straight-backed servant. The youth wore his hair in a high ponytail, fair-skinned and handsome, with deep, indifferent black eyes. As he worked, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows revealed a pair of lean, muscular arms radiating raw power. Handsome looks, a great physique. A true gem. I wiped my drool with a handkerchief and turned to instruct Xiao, starting today, transfer him to work in my courtyard. Within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, find out everything about him. Xiao tilted her head, blinking in confusion. Yes, ma'am. You handle the investigation. I have other matters to attend to. Don't follow me. I summoned a loyal servant I'd brought from my natal home and began making arrangements. I devised ways to sell off the mansion's rare treasures and curiosities for cash. To avoid arousing the old lady's suspicion, I planned to sell one item every few days, proceeding gradually. After finishing my tasks, I returned to my quarters where Xiao arrived breathlessly. Madam, I've found out. The servant you asked about is named Pei Chang, the only son of old Pei, the tofu seller from South Alley. I learned he trained in martial arts from childhood, originally dreaming of joining the army, galloping across battlefields, and defending the nation. I cut Xiao Xiao off, trained in martial arts since childhood, and his family sells tofu. While not merchants, they have a livelihood. How could they be so destitute they'd sell their only son to the Marquis' household for menial labor? Xiao Xiao sighed at this. It was because old Pei came delivering tofu that day, and the young Marquis ate it and got diarrhea. He immediately accused the tofu of being spoiled. In his rage, he ordered his men to beat old Pei to death. My face darkened instantly. Is there no law in this land? Did the authorities not intervene? They did, Xiao Xiao replied. When Pei Chang came to collect the body, the young Marquis took his father's corpse and fed it to the dogs right in front of him. Pei Chang was pinned down by guards and couldn't move. Overcome with grief, he went to file a complaint against the young Marquis. I was puzzled. Then how did he end up working menial jobs at the Marquis' mansion? Xiao Xiao hesitated, glancing around before whispering once she was sure no one was nearby, "Madam, how can you know nothing beyond your affection for the Marquis? Do you understand how officials protect one another?" Setting aside the Marquis' status, the old lady is the imperial consort's sister. Who dares offend her? With the imperial consort's protection, who would dare claim to have seen old Pei at the Marquis' residence? Without proof, it's a case of dead man's testimony. Finally, Pei Chang was accused of falsely framing the Marquis, a capital offense. He should have been executed on the spot. Thankfully, the Chief Justice showed mercy, pitying Pei Chang. Instead, he was punished by signing a bond of servitude, doomed to menial labor in the Marquis' mansion for life. I sneered coldly. The Chief Justice wasn't showing mercy to Pei Chang. He was merely colluding with Xie Biyuan. Pei Chang's father died at Xie Biyuan's hands, yet he was forced to enter the Marquis' mansion as a menial. Made to crawl like a dog within its walls, toiling daily for the very man who murdered his father, this was more humiliating than death itself. My nose stung with unshed tears. Then I remembered, this wasn't the modern world. Laws held no sway here. In this dynasty, when commoners died, they vanished like water into water. No one cared. I just couldn't understand. Why would the original owner have ever loved Xie Biyuan, a treacherous, murderous, brutal, and inhuman scoundrel? Perhaps those caught in the thick of things are blind to the truth. I lifted my head and took a deep breath. Issue the order. From this day forward, all food and clothing in the manor shall be kept simple. Their arrogance had gone too far. Suddenly, I felt that merely selling off the manor's possessions was still too lenient. I must also extract more silver from the household's food, clothing, and daily expenses. The loyal Courage Marquis' household runs rampant, feasting on meat daily, damaging their merit. A few years of vegetarian meals will serve to accumulate merit for their marquisate. Xiao Xiao looked troubled, but what if the old lady inquires? I lifted my teacup and smiled. She won't. Since her husband's death, she spent her days indoors eating vegetarian meals and chanting sutras, cultivating the image of a virtuous wife. Even if she were so enraged she couldn't keep up the act, she wouldn't dare confront me. Xiao Xiao pressed further. What about the extra silver? Should we deposit it into the estate's treasury? Xiao Xiao was my personal maid brought from my natal home, so I saw no need to conceal anything from her. I have a use for it. But Xiao Xiao hesitated. How will we account for it? The old lady audits the books monthly. I chuckled softly. No need to worry. It's right up my alley. I studied accounting. Xiao Xiao blinked in confusion. What is accounting? Bookkeeping. I murmured thoughtfully. So his name is Pei Chang. I immediately instructed Xiao Xiao to leave the estate and run an errand for me. The next day, I arrived at the woodshed. I studied Pei Chang without any pretense. I watched his long, sinewy hands, veins visible beneath the skin, grip the axe. His swing was swift and precise. It was as if he held a razor-sharp blade. He seemed born to be a warrior. For a moment, I was lost in thought. Had Xie Biyuan not imprisoned him, perhaps he would have become a young general, clad in splendid armor and riding a fiery steed. Perhaps my gaze was too intense. Pei Chang lowered the axe and bowed slightly, uneasily. "Greetings, mistress." His youthful voice was icy, his handsome features flashing a brief, grim, murderous intent. It vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. As Xie Biyuan's wife, he likely resented me too. "He and I are not of the same kind," I said, lifting his bowing hand. "From this day forward, you shall serve as my personal guard. What say you?" Pei Cheng took half a step back, coldly withdrawing his hand. I wanted to explain, stepping forward slightly. But I tripped over a log, my footing wavering. My face suddenly buried itself against his broad chest. I heard his heart skip a beat. I lifted my face to look at him. So close, my lips nearly brushed his jaw. He was staring down at me, his body tense and still. We locked eyes for a few seconds. Then he abruptly pushed me away. He hadn't even realized he just pushed against my chest. When he caught on, his face flushed as red as a chili pepper. He stood frozen stiff as a board, looking helplessly at his own hands, then back at me. Stammering, he explained, "It wasn't my intention." I teased him deliberately, tiptoeing closer to whisper in his ear, "Xie Biyuan and I haven't consummated our marriage yet. You touched my body, you must take responsibility. You've ruined a maiden's reputation." His blush spiraled out of control, spreading rapidly to his ears. Within moments, he regained his composure and stepped back to maintain distance. "Mistress, please restrain yourself. Teasing an honest soul really isn't very nice, huh?" I didn't continue to tease him, getting straight to the point. "You want revenge? I can help you. The condition is you become my personal guard, protecting my safety." His pupils contracted slightly, his eyes betraying wariness. His distrust was understandable. Before he could refuse, I cut him off. "I'll show you my sincerity. I'll grant you a day's rest. Go home to see your mother. Hear what she has to say, then return and tell me whether you're willing to pledge your loyalty to me." It was just past noon. The March breeze was warm and gentle as I reclined leisurely on a wooden chair. When I awoke, the youth's tall, slender figure stood silently before the courtyard. I didn't know how long Pei Cheng had been standing there. I beckoned him over with a wave. "Have you made up your mind?" I asked. He nodded. As his gaze met mine, a flicker of emotion rippled through his cold, deep eyes. As if telling me, "Thank you. Yesterday, I sent Xiao Xiao out to run an errand for me. I had her go to comfort Pei Cheng's mother." Pei Cheng had trained in martial arts since childhood, his swordplay masterful. Having lived in the Marquis' residence for years, he had ample opportunity to kill Xie Biyuan. He refrained only to spare his mother. Xie Biyuan exploited this weakness, growing bold enough to keep him confined within the mansion, subjecting him to humiliation. After Pei Cheng's father passed away, his mother fell ill and remained bedridden. Meanwhile, he was demoted to menial tasks within the Marquis' residence, leaving his family utterly destitute. I had Xiao Xiao deliver banknotes to Lady Pei and arranged for a maid to attend to her daily needs, on the condition she leave the capital with these funds. This sum would suffice for her to live out her days in peace elsewhere. With Lady Pei gone from the capital, Pei Cheng would have no lingering worries. "Why help me?" Pei Cheng's deep eyes held confusion. "The whole capital knows you deeply loved Xie Biyuan. Is that so?" I didn't tell him I'd bound to the system to avenge the original host. I merely leaned forward, meeting his gaze earnestly. He had a mistress. He betrayed me. Therefore, he deserved to die. Pei Cheng froze under my gaze. A faint blush spread across his handsome face. His mind seemed elsewhere, lost in thought, before he shifted his eyes away, a hint of nervousness in his expression. He gave a faint, "All right." I stood up and stretched lazily. "Come on, let's go out and do something big." The capital was thriving, it would be a waste not to do business here. Every corner held opportunity. Unnoticed, fresh snow had fallen and melted away. 3 years passed in a rush, opening shops to build influence, gathering evidence of Xie Biyuan's ruthless crimes. And Xie Biyuan returned with his mistress and child. After 3 years of preparation, my revenge plan officially began. Xiao Xiao rushed over anxiously. "The old lady is pulling the young Marquis aside to complain. She's calling you a poisonous woman, accusing you of mistreating her, withholding food and drink, starving her until she's gaunt and emaciated. I heard Xie Biyuan was furious upon hearing this and was rushing toward my courtyard. Behind him, a wet nurse carried a 2-year-old child. Xiao Xiao was sweating profusely with worry. "Madam, we should flee quickly." I remained calm, sipping my tea. "It's fine. You may go." Xiao Xiao tried to persuade me further, but seeing my unmoved expression, she reluctantly withdrew. No sooner had Xiao Xiao left than Pei Chang leapt through the window. A long sword gripped in his hand, his brow furrowed with intense, murderous intent. "With me here, he won't harm you in the slightest. I'll stop him." I shook my head. "No need." No sooner had I spoken than Xie Biyuan stormed in, fury boiling over. Pei Chang vanished in a flash, retreating behind the screen. "Shin Shu Qing, you venomous woman! How dare you mistreat this Marquis's mother? Today, I shall kill you." Xie Biyuan stormed into the room, his emotions boiling over. Just as I opened my mouth to warn him, he was caught off guard by the mousetrap I'd placed by the doorway. He yelped in pain. He leapt up, clutching his leg, glaring at me with fury so intense he nearly ground his molars to dust. "You dared to kill your husband?" I glanced at him impassively. "My lord has just returned. How can you pin such a baseless charge on me? Rats have been running rampant in the manor lately. I merely set traps to rid us of them." Xie Biyuan painfully removed the rat trap from his foot, his entire face flushed crimson with agony. His teeth ground together with a grating sound. "How do you explain abusing my mother? What evidence of abuse?" I poured more tea into my cup, sipping it deliberately. "Mother observes a vegetarian diet, recites sutras, and honors the loyal and valiant Marquis. How could I dare serve meat to mother? This is common knowledge throughout the capital. Even His Majesty praised mother as an exemplary wife and a model noblewoman." I paused. Could it be that her ladyship's vegetarianism was a sham? That would be treason. Xie Biyuan's face turned ashen under my retort. Of course he dared not admit it was false. The old nurse behind him, seeing Xie Biyuan rendered speechless, stepped forward to remind him, "Young Marquis, the child is the priority." I glanced at the infant in the matron's arms. So young, yet his eyes already held malice. A naturally wicked seed. No wonder the original owner could never warm to him. Xie Biyuan suppressed some of his anger, his brows darkening as he declared, "Chang'er will henceforth be your legitimate eldest son." His tone was not one of consultation, but of declaration. In this hereditary dynasty, the legitimate eldest son inherited the Marquis title. That meant everything in this mansion would eventually belong to him. Recalling the future cruelty this child would unleash, I gently cradled my slightly rounded belly and chuckled. "My lord jests. I've only just conceived, how could I bear a 2-year-old child?" Xie Biyuan froze, then his expression twisted in fury, nearly exploding. "I've only just returned. How could you possibly be pregnant?" I glanced at the half-exposed sleeve of a man's robe peeking from behind the screen and replied coolly, "My lord jokes again. Just days ago, I journeyed south to seek you out. How could you have forgotten?" During the 3 years Xie Biyuan vanished, he'd been carousing in Jiangnan with his mistress, spending their days in intimate embrace, living a life of unbridled pleasure. Though the emperor hadn't forcibly sent him to the frontier, if word spread of his romantic escapades in Jiangnan with his mistress, Xie Biyuan would surely face punishment. Who else could he blame for his own poor concealment? "How did you know I was in Jiangnan?" His expression turned shocked. Realizing his slip, he hastily denied it. "I've been stationed at the border these past 3 years." I rose and walked to Xie Biyuan's side, speaking softly, "Your lordship, I've been keeping a close eye on you. For instance, I know the exact location of your Jiangnan residence and the number of servants in your household. Since your lordship wants me to acknowledge this child, why don't we go before His Majesty? Let the emperor decide whether I should claim this child. What do you say?" Xie Biyuan clenched his knuckles, glaring at me with fury. Of course, he dared not take this to the emperor. On our wedding day, he brought his concubine home, making it common knowledge. Now he could take as many concubines as he pleased, except for Ziyi. Marrying her would be another direct challenge to the imperial authority. Unless he wanted to die. As for making Ziyi's child the legitimate heir, Pure fantasy. The original owner indulged him, but I won't. After the talks broke down, Xie Yuan suppressed his rage and stormed out. Pei Cheng emerged from behind the screen, jaw clenched, his dark eyes fixed intently on my belly. You're carrying his child? That tone of accusation. Why did it sound tinged with jealousy? I said, I've just gained weight. It was merely an excuse to placate Xie Yuan. I couldn't acknowledge this child. I had to plan ahead. If I failed to completely bring down the home mansion, this child would become a liability. Pei Cheng exhaled in relief, a smile slowly spreading across his stern face. I leaned closer to him. You seem off. You like me? The usually composed Pei Cheng pointed frantically outside. The moonlight is beautiful. He left that statement hanging and scrambled out the window in a panic. I stared at the fiery red sun outside, momentarily stunned. Nonsense seemed to have materialized right then. Early the next morning, before dawn, Xiao Xiao urgently roused me. Madam, it's urgent. The young Marquis demands you go to the old lady's quarters immediately. I knew it. Xie Yuan wouldn't let this go easily. He just suffered a setback yesterday, and now, using my sleeping in as an excuse, he was forcing me to relinquish my duties as headmistress. The woman massaging the old lady's back behind her shot me a taunting smirk. This was my first encounter with Xie Yuan's concubine, Ze. I studied her, unable to suppress a frown. This woman was as plain as salt, not even as delicate and charming as Xiao Xiao. Her looks were bad enough, but her heart was venomous. The original owner was, after all, a talented beauty of the capital, radiant in appearance and kind-hearted. How could she possibly be inferior to this woman? I gave Xie Yuan a thumbs up. Quite the taste you have. The old woman fiercely defended her son. Seeing his darkened expression, she slammed the table in anger. How dare you speak to your husband like that? You're the daughter of a censor, after all. Haven't you memorized the admonitions for women? How were you raised by your parents? I rolled my eyes at her. She only got bold now that her son was back to back her up. Usually, she wouldn't dare utter a peep. You've been married into the Marquis' household for 3 years and never once paid your respects to me. Is that unfair to you? I shook my head. Not at all. The old lady, emboldened by her advantage, snorted coldly, radiating an air of intent to punish me by family law. You're lazy and gluttonous, disrespectful to elders, and neglectful of your husband. Is that unfair to you? I retorted, I won't admit to neglecting my husband. I became a widow right after marrying in. Am I supposed to serve a ghost? Wasn't the one massaging your back after my death the one who'd been serving your son all along? I never had the chance. The matriarch's face flushed crimson as she pointed at me and raged. You sharp-tongued, ill-mannered creature. Right, you're absolutely right, I said. Just tell me what you want. I need to go back for a nap. The three exchanged knowing glances, no longer bothering with pretense. The old lady cut straight to the point. Your virtue doesn't match your position. From today onward, hand over the household management. All affairs, big and small, will be under my control. The maids looked at me pitifully. Surrendering management meant declaring a change in leadership. What say would I have in the household from now on? Put plainly, aside from my title as mistress, I'd be no different from the servants. Any clear-eyed observer could see the Marquis and the old lady were subtly reclaiming authority to hand over to Ze. This way, the illegitimate son would fare better in the household. Everyone expected me to throw a tantrum, cry, protest, threaten suicide, refusing to relinquish control. Instead, I agreed readily. Very well. I'd been fretting over how to offload this hot potato. The fall guy arrived. Today, the Marquis of Loyal Courage's estate is a hollow shell. 3 years ago, the Emperor punished Xie Yuan by exiling him to the frontier and suspending his salary for 5 years. When Xie Yuan left, he took most of the treasury's silver notes and fled south with Ze. I secretly transferred all the remaining funds out. Even the valuable items in the estate were sold off by me through various means. Today, the mansion appears prosperous, yet it is utterly destitute, burdened by a mountain of debts. I instructed Xiao Xiao, go fetch the ledgers and present them to the old lady. Soon, Xiao Xiao handed the ledgers to the old lady. She squinted, scrutinizing them intently. Even if she pored over every page, she wouldn't find a single flaw. The estate's expenditures were meticulously recorded, my ledgers were flawless. After half an incense stick's time, the matriarch confirmed everything was in order. She tucked away the ledgers and said coldly, "You may leave." I turned away, a cold smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Back in the courtyard, I instructed Xiao Xiao, "Go outside and notify the creditors. The Marquis has returned. They may come to collect their debts after noon." After Xiao Xiao left, I ordered Pei Cheng, "Disguise yourself and inform all shopkeepers that starting today, the Qing family chain stores are accepting investments. This offer is valid only for today." I sneered. The real show was just beginning. By noon, creditors had swarmed the Marquis' residence, shoulder to shoulder. The trio who'd been so triumphant that morning now stood outside the gates, faces grim. How could the loyal and valiant Marquis' household possibly owe debts? "That's impossible." "What? You intend to renege?" The shopkeepers brandished their promissory notes. "If you don't repay the silver today, we'll tear the loyal and valiant Marquis' residence to pieces." These shopkeepers were backed by noble offspring, some even by imperial princes. Their establishments held investments from the capital's privileged youth. They might have shown the Marquis of Loyal Valor some deference in the past, but today was different. Today, the most profitable chain of shops in the entire capital was seeking investors. Faced with such immense profit, the worst aspects of human nature would be laid bare. Where there's profit, people's pupils dilate, they become excited. Even the most distant acquaintances can become your right-hand man. I stretched lazily. "Let's go. Time to watch the show. And let's spice things up a bit to make the show even more entertaining." I walked up to the mansion gate, feigning a yawn as I raised my handkerchief. "What's all this commotion? Disturbing my afternoon rest." Xie Biyuan, the old lady, and Zi shot dagger-like glances my way. The old lady's wrinkled face twisted into a fierce scowl as she glared at me. The veins on Xie Biyuan's forehead bulged. Zi's eyes blazed with fury, her face contorted, completely abandoning her usual prim and proper facade. The three of them lunged at me like demons. "You wretched woman! How dare you go out borrowing money?" I snapped my fingers leisurely. "Pei Cheng." In the blink of an eye, Pei Cheng materialized, landing with a thud. His blindingly bright sword, like a silver dragon, flared to protect me. His face cold, he enunciated each word, "Who dares move?" The three glanced at the blade's edge, their lunging motions halting abruptly. Hiding behind Pei Cheng, I flashed them a middle finger. Hee hee. Zi was the most bitter. After years of groveling and humbling herself, she'd finally clawed her way to becoming the mistress of the house. She hadn't even had a chance to bask in her newfound authority, to boss around the children with an air of superiority. The money was gone. Fuming, she stomped her foot and yelled at me, "You bitch." After cursing, she turned and wrapped her arms around Xie Biyuan's arm, pouting reproachfully, "Your lordship, this woman must be behind all the debts in the household." "Of course." Xie Biyuan shot her a disdainful glare. "Do I look like an idiot? Can't I see that?" His eyes blazed crimson, his gaze practically gouging me out. "You borrowed the money. You repay it. This has nothing to do with the loyal courage Marquis Xie." I let out a nervous laugh. The original owner might have been crazy enough to pay it off herself back then, but expecting me to do it? That's a pipe dream. The old lady was sneaking around, sending a maid to fetch consort Shu to come and take charge. I didn't stop her. Protected by Pei Cheng, I walked to the manor gate and wiped away tears as I addressed the shopkeepers. "Gentlemen, did you hear that? The Marquis of Loyal Courage's household bears no responsibility whatsoever. My husband favored his concubine over his wife. When His Majesty punished him by exiling him to the frontier, he defied the imperial decree and refused to go. Instead, he secretly fled to Jiangnan." The creditors' eyes lit up at the mention of his defiance. Their hearts grew even bolder. I continued my tearful lament. "When he left, he took all the estate's silver. He's living it up in Jiangnan with his mistress, even buying a luxurious mansion. I'm so pitiful. My husband absconded with the family fortune and his concubine right after our wedding. Left alone to uphold the Marquis Xie, I've had to use my own dowry to cover expenses. But mother is truly precious. She claims to be the imperial consort's sister. How could she possibly eat ordinary vegetarian fare? With these words, the imperial consort dared not come forward to defend her sister, only gritting her teeth and swallowing her anger. If the emperor blamed her, she'd be lucky to escape unscathed. I said, Mother only eats rare mushrooms that grow atop snow-capped peaks and drinks only dew collected from flower blossoms. A single meal costs as much as an ordinary family spends in a month. Filial piety comes first. I'd rather suffer myself than let Mother go without. That's why I went out to borrow money. But I wiped away my tears and pointed at the old lady. Mother ordered me to borrow it all. You wretch, you're lying. The old lady fumed, her teeth chattering. You insolent slut, how dare you slander me? I covered my face with a handkerchief and wept. If you don't believe me, ask Mother's personal wet nurse. All eyes turned to the old nurse. The old lady's sharp, cruel face twisted into a sneer, looking at me as if I were a fool. She likely thought I'd lost my mind. How could her own person possibly speak in my favor? In the blink of an eye, the old nurse spoke. The young mistress is correct. The old lady does indeed only eat the most expensive vegetarian dishes. The smug look on the old lady's face instantly crumbled. She was stunned. She stared at the old matron in disbelief. She didn't know the old matron had long been on my side. The loyal servants and matrons I'd brought from my natal home had secretly conspired with her. They'd been colluding for quite some time. Ignoring the shock on the faces of the 3 Xie family members, I addressed the shopkeepers. Gentlemen, my husband has been unfaithful to me. Do not blame me for being heartless. The money was borrowed in the name of the loyal and valiant Marquis' household. Debts must be repaid to their rightful owners. My husband possesses that extravagant mansion in Jiangnan, worth a fortune. He has plenty of money. Please continue to collect your debts. As we departed, I deliberately asked Xiao Xiao, oh, right, I heard the Qing family is holding a business meeting today. What's the deadline? Xiao Xiao shouted back, deadline is at the hour of you. We departed with laughter. The shopkeepers pounced on the 3 Xie family members like ravenous tigers. Their pitiful cries echoed behind us. Compared to what I've done, what the Xie household inflicted upon the original owner and Old Pei was but a trifle. How many others besides Old Pei had they humiliated? Today, I'll let them taste the bitter irony of oppressing the weak with their privileged status, only to be crushed by another powerful force. As we neared the main mistress's quarters, Xiao Xiao said expressionlessly, Madam, I have matters to attend to. Without second thought, I nodded in agreement. Go ahead. Back in my room, I asked the system, how much of the original owner's resentment has dissipated? The system replied, not a shred has dissipated. The system's answer surprised me. Impossible, I pressed. Did you misread it? Though Xie Ze and the old lady were still alive, the Young Marquis household had been stripped bare, reduced to penniless poverty. The mansion now bore a notorious reputation throughout the capital, a fitting punishment. How could the original owner's resentment remain entirely undiminished? Yet the system affirmed with certainty, not a shred of resentment has dissipated. I pondered silently. Had I miscalculated the dynamics of vengeance? Or must the Xie family perish before the original owner's resentment could be appeased? I resolved to hand over the 3 years' worth of evidence I'd gathered, proof of Xie Biyuan's callous disregard for human life, to the Ministry of Justice. Just as I stepped over the threshold, Xiao Xiao appeared, clutching a black cloth bag. Her eyes were cold as ice as she demanded, Madam, where are you going? I stared in confusion at the black bag in Xiao Xiao's hands. Bloodstains were slowly seeping through it. I held my breath, my scalp prickling with dread. Xiao Xiao was unrecognizable from before, her face cold and terrifying. Step by step, she forced me back into the room. Then she flung the bag onto the table, revealing a blood-soaked human head inside. It was Xie Biyuan. I froze in place, my eyes wide with terror. Xiao Xiao walked toward me with a low chuckle, snatching the evidence I'd intended to hand over to the Ministry of Justice. She eyed me, smiling indifferently as she tore the evidence to shreds. Madam, what are you afraid of? I avenged you. Aren't you happy? Too terrified to move, my legs felt nailed to the spot. I stood there, dazed. Xiao Xiao raised her hand, still wet with blood, and pinched my cheek hard. I avenged you. Why aren't you smiling? Soon, I recovered from my shock and asked in confusion, what was your purpose in doing this? The reason I didn't let Pei Cheng kill Xie Biyuan directly, but instead handed the evidence to the Ministry of Justice first, was because Xie Biyuan and I were betrothed by the Emperor. Divorce was a pipe dream. Unless I sacrificed family ties for my own safety, extricating myself without harm. Otherwise, if trouble befell the Marquis' household, I'd inevitably be implicated. Xiao Xiao was my personal maid, she couldn't have been unaware of the critical stakes. Yet she not only destroyed Xie Biyuan's incriminating evidence but also killed him. I couldn't fathom her motive. I treated her like a sister, harboring no personal grudge against her. Why would she harm me? Want to know why? Xiao Xiao gave a cold laugh, patting my cheek before sitting down calmly. She picked up the teapot beside Xie Biyuan's severed head and poured herself a cup. Because I want you dead. I've already reported your killing of young Marquis Xie to the authorities. Soon, the Ministry of Justice will come for you. She sipped her tea, glancing at me coldly. The whole capital knows you had a dispute with the young Marquis today. He treated you cruelly, so you harbored hatred and killed him. And I'm the witness. I laughed bitterly. I thought she was utterly loyal to me, yet everything she did was only to destroy me. But I just don't understand. Why are you trying to ruin me? Xiao Zhao's grip on the teacup tightened abruptly, hatred flashing through her once pure, clear eyes. Sister, you were sheltered well by mother. There are things you simply wouldn't know. My breath caught. You called me sister? She lifted her eyelids to meet mine, the hatred in her gaze sharpening. Indeed, I must address you as sister. My mother was your mother's foot-washing maid. Years ago, father took her innocence in a drunken rage. Soon after, she became pregnant. When your mother discovered this, she locked my mother away in the woodshed in her fury. To torment her, they fed her the scraps left by the dogs each day. Bearing the humiliation, my mother endured and gave birth to me on that dog food. But your mother wouldn't relent. To shame my mother, she forced me to serve as your maid. She declared that a child born to a lowly servant remained lowly, a pheasant could never become a phoenix. She tortured my mother to death, then framed her for adultery with a married man. In the end, my mother, consumed by shame, hanged herself. My mother died unjustly, while I was slandered by your mother as the illegitimate daughter of the estate's stable hand. I gasped, so my mother didn't die of illness, you killed her? Heh heh heh, her laughter rang like silver bells, clear and pleasant, yet laced with malice. You're not entirely stupid. I laced her food with poison every single day. Made her suffer slowly until it finally killed her. It dawned on me. The original owner wasn't killed directly by Xie Biyuan. The real murderer was Xiao Xiao. She was repaying him in kind. The original owner's mother had framed her own mother for adultery with a servant, so after Xiao Xiao killed the original owner, she framed the original owner for the same crime. Being hurt by that scumbag was one thing, but what truly left the original owner's resentment festering was that the person who killed her was Xiao Xiao, the one she regarded as a sister. No wonder my revenge against Xie Biyuan didn't ease the original owner's resentment at all. Xiao Xiao lifted her head excitedly. Do you know whose woman Zi is? I bought her. Before you were to marry into the Marquis' household, I had Zi tell Xie Biyuan you were filthy, no better than a seductress from the brothel. All to make you suffer, to make you love him but never have him, to make the one you cherished most despise you. As she spoke, her expression suddenly darkened. Little did I know you'd change your heart and stop loving him. But I've thought of a new way to make you suffer. She leaned closer, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Ever heard the saying, while the mantis stalks the cicada, the oriole waits behind? You wish to destroy the Marquis' household? I'll help you, by setting it ablaze. Once all of Jingqing knows of your discord with Xie Biyuan, I'll kill him and frame you. Killing a marquis is a crime punishable by exterminating 9 generations of your family. Her laughter bordered on madness. I want every last member of your Shen family dead. The excitement in Xiao Xiao's eyes transformed into a flame of hatred. She yanked the hairpin from her own hair and plunged it viciously into Xie Biyuan's corpse, venting her fury. Every last one of Yushin family members will burn in hell. Xiao Zhao's once clear, bright face twisted into a horrifying grimace. These are grudges from the previous generation. I knew nothing of them. Why harm me? Search your heart. Have I ever wronged you? She blinked her round eyes innocently and said, Sister, I just want you dead. Why do you need so many reasons? I just hate you. That's all. Mad woman. Beyond redemption. Oh, right, she added, I noticed you care about that guard surnamed Pei. I sent someone to kill his mother. By now, she should be dead. Have I been good to you? I trembled with rage, yet she smiled and asked, Sister, are you touched? My hands clenched tight, my voice nearly shaking. The common people are not straw dogs, human lives are not worthless grass. The Pei family is innocent, have you no conscience? What makes you any different from those villains? If your mother's spirit knew you slaughtered innocents to avenge her, she'd be heartbroken. Conscience? She arched an eyebrow. I have no heart, where would conscience come from? As long as it torments you, what do a few deaths matter? Why should a slave's child never rise like a phoenix? Why must I serve you as a maid? I too am the daughter of a censor. Why were you born to a life of privilege? Why did you marry the son of a high official? She screamed hysterically, why? Looking at her twisted, distorted face, I felt both irony and sorrow. In that moment, I suddenly understood, she wasn't avenging her mother. Everything she did was merely to feed her own jealousy and greed. Amidst the shouting, soldiers from the Ministry of Justice burst into the room, swords drawn. Xiao Xiao's expression changed abruptly, like a frightened little rabbit. She hid behind the soldiers, trembling as she pointed at the severed head on the table. The lady killed someone. She killed the Marquis. Hiding behind the officers, she tilted her chin slightly toward me, a sinister smile stretching across her innocent face. The mistress was about to silence me by killing me too. Thank goodness you arrived in time. Her eyebrows arched lightly, her expression radiating absolute confidence. Is that so? I murmured, Minister, come out. The Minister of Justice and Pei Cheng emerged from behind the screen. Impossible. Xiao Xiao nearly collapsed at the sight. How could the Minister of Justice be in your room? How could you possibly know my plan? She demanded bitterly, when did you start suspecting me? Her suspicion began when she mentioned old Pei. Back then, she bluntly explained the principle of officials protecting one another, and that's when my suspicions began. This is ancient times. Maidservants are cautious and careful, rarely daring to mention their master's affairs, let alone speak freely about the bureaucracy or the imperial palace. Moreover, she never referred to herself as this servant, always using I when speaking to me. I could see the arrogance ingrained in her very bones. From that moment on, I kept my guard up around her. I sent people to secretly investigate Xiao Xiao. But Xiao Xiao had killed everyone who knew about her mother. The investigation hit a dead end. Until I met Xie, my suspicions only deepened. Xie was vicious, yet her emotions were written all over her face, she couldn't hide them. She was absolutely not the type who could scheme and manipulate someone to death. Xie Bun, meanwhile, was as thick as a log. Beyond his bedtime trysts with Ce, he was nothing but a pompous, uneducated noble scion who flaunted his marquis title. The day Xie Bun brought Ce home, I saw her lurking furtively behind the rockery, waiting for someone. The person she was waiting for was none other than Xiao Xiao. She was exceedingly respectful toward Xiao Xiao, bowing low and murmuring submissively. Combined with what I learned today from the system, that the original owner's resentment hadn't dissipated in the slightest, I surmised that someone else must have killed her. And that someone was likely Xiao Xiao. But I didn't know why Xiao Xiao would want to harm the original owner. Therefore, I had Pei Cheng summon the Minister of Justice beforehand, hiding him in the room to stage a performance with me. Xiao Xiao knew killing the Marquis meant certain death. Seizing a moment when everyone was distracted, she drew a small knife hidden in her sleeve and lunged at me like a madwoman. If I can't live, neither can you. I closed my eyes, expecting the pain I imagined, but it never came. Opening my eyes, I saw Pei Cheng shielding me, taking the blade for me. He spun around, swiftly seizing Xiao Xiao's wrist. With a tightening grip, he twisted her arm backward, flinging the dagger from her grasp to the floor. As Ministry of Justice officers pinned Xiao Xiao down and dragged her away, she laughed, her body shaking violently. You think you've won? Pei Cheng's mother is dead. she died protecting you. You two can never be together. Ha 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 ha. After they left, I bandaged Pei Cheng's wound. Don't worry, your mother is still alive. I know. He lifted his gaze to meet mine. I received the carrier pigeon. Thank you for sending men to protect my mother all this time. I nodded with a smile. As I finished bandaging him and helped him adjust his clothes, my fingertips brushed against his solid, powerful chest. His heart was pounding fiercely, as if it might leap out of his chest any second. I froze for a moment. Pretending nothing was amiss, I smoothed his collar into place. At that moment, the system announced in my ear, "Congratulations, host, on completing the mission. The original host's resentment has dissipated. As a reward, all properties you acquired here may be converted into cash to bring back to the real world. Would you like to return to the real world?" The system glanced at Pei Cheng. Of course, you may also choose to stay here for love. Before I could answer, Pei Cheng grabbed my arm and pulled me into his embrace. As if sensing my impending departure, his eyes instantly reddened. He held me tightly, his scorching warmth searing through the fabric against my skin. After a long while, he whispered, "I like you." His voice choked with emotion as he confessed his desire to spend the rest of his life with me. A light rain began to fall outside the eaves, and a refreshing cool breeze swept through the window lattice, brushing my face. I knew clearly that he and I were like ice and fire. If we were together, friction was inevitable. I came from an enlightened new era, he was rooted in a feudal old dynasty. Our beliefs and the heights we stood upon were different. If I cling to this embrace now, when time fades our passion, I'll be trapped in jealous squabbles in the back courtyard. I could almost see my own fate. Life's paths diverge north and south, you head toward Xiang, I toward Qin. After gently pushing him away, I told the system firmly, I'm going back. Compared to love, isn't being a rich woman back in the modern world more appealing? The end.